In 1992, the US bases left the Philippines. The world thought Manila had vanished from the power map. But in Pyongyang, a different feeling began to grow. Fear. Because by 2014, one quiet signature changed everything. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement wasn't loud, but it turned the Philippines into a forward launch pad, pointed straight at North Korea. A small democracy, once ignored, now sits inside the nightmares of one of the world's most dangerous regimes. And the question is clear. If Manila has no nukes and no superfleet, why is North Korea still afraid? Picture this. Filipino troops trained in jungles, drilling with American soldiers, hackers blocking Pyongyang's digital attacks, and naval patrols cutting North Korea's secret trade routes in the South China Sea. You might think only big powers scare dictators, but sometimes it's the quiet ones that change the game. And in the next few minutes, you'll walk through the real timeline of fear, from abandoned bases to cyber firewalls to covert influence. By the end, you'll know why North Korea fears not what the Philippines has, but what it can become. In 1992, the United States packed up and left. Clark Air Base went quiet. Subic Bay stopped humming with jets and warships. People said it was the end of an era, that the Philippines was done being a key military player. But one place didn't celebrate: North Korea, because something far more permanent stayed behind. Geography. Luzon, the northernmost island, still sits right under the map, directly on the route to the Korean peninsula, a perfect springboard, a natural aircraft carrier made of land. North Korea's generals saw it clearly. Even if the bases are gone, the threat can return. Fast. The Philippines doesn't have to launch an attack. It just has to let someone else use its land. And in war, that's enough. That's terrifying. Because when a partner leaves, you can measure it. But when it sleeps, you can't predict it. Unpredictability is fear. North Korea knew. The moment tensions rise in Asia, that sleeping partner could wake up. And when it does, it won't be alone. It will bring troops, jets, missiles, and maybe even cyber warriors. The US might be absent, but it's never truly gone. And the Philippines, that quiet archipelago, still has the power to become the launchpad that haunts Pyongyang. Because in geopolitics, airstrips can be rebuilt. Ports can reopen, but location never leaves. So the question isn't, when did the Philippines lose its power? It's this: when does that sleeping force wake up again? 2014. A single signature changes everything. It's called the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. And just like that, US troops returned to the Philippines, not to stay forever, but to rotate, to train, to prepare. At first, it seems like politics, a simple treaty, a quiet handshake. But in Pyongyang, it's a signal, a chilling one, because 9 Philippine bases, scattered across Luzon, Palawan, and more, are suddenly available again. And they aren't just airports. They're launch points, refueling stations, missile depots. If a war breaks out in Korea, those bases mean this: jets can fly in hours, ships can dock in days. Missiles can cross oceans, from Luzon's edge to North Korea's heart. And North Korea knows the enemy no longer comes from the north alone. Now, there's a southern flank, and it's not empty. It's full of runways, soldiers, and intent. What frightens Pyongyang most? Not that America returned, but where it returned. Because these bases are inside a democracy, one that's closer than Japan, one that's bolder than before, and one that remembers how it was left behind once. But not again. EDCA isn't just ink on paper. It's steel on land, eyes in the sky, and firepower just one signal away. For North Korea, every base built under EDCA feels like a pulse, a heartbeat, counting down toward a war they hope never comes. Because now the Philippines isn't just nearby, it's inside the war map. So ask yourself, is a paper agreement really enough to scare a regime? Not on its own. But when it turns into jets, allies, and launch codes, it becomes a nightmare. 2016. In the thick forests of Luzon, Filipino troops stand shoulder to shoulder with US Marines. Not for parade, for war games. And this time it's not just training, it's transformation. Because these soldiers raised in mountains hardened by jungle wars, forged in decades of insurgency, bring something rare. Chaos doesn't scare them. They've lived in it. Guerrilla ambushes, mountain firefights, close-quarter combat. While Pyongyang drills its rigid conscripts in parade formations, the Philippine forces are learning to move unseen, to strike without warning, to survive with nothing. And now, they're being refined, sharpened with American tactics, tuned with Allied technology. Balikatan, the joint drills, isn't just a handshake anymore. It's a boot camp for interoperability, a forge for regional muscle. A battalion of Filipino Marines in the jungle can pin down an enemy 10 times its size. That's the power of home ground mastery. To North Korea, this is a new problem, one they can't model, because you can't predict the jungle. You can't simulate the mind of a fighter who's grown up in chaos and calls it home. This isn't about numbers, it's about nerve. And nerves of steel are being trained every year, right on Beijing's and Pyongyang's radar. In every ravine, behind every tree, there could be a Filipino scout linked to satellites, ready for war. They don't need super weapons. They are the terrain's weapon. So when dictators dream of war, they now see something worse than bombs. They see a soldier who doesn't flinch. And that's a threat you can't outnumber. But there's another battlefield rising, one with no guns at all. Are they ready for that? 2018. A new war front opens. But this one isn't fought in jungles or seas. It's fought in silence, across servers and screens. The Philippines takes a bold step. It begins building a cyber defense command. Not for show, for survival. Because the enemy wears no uniform. The enemy comes through emails, ports, and malware. North Korean hackers, known for robbing banks and crashing networks, set their sights on Manila. But something strange happens. They fail. One attack after another. Blocked. Servers hardened. Systems patched. The doors slammed shut. And more than defense, countermeasures begin. Tracing, tracking, testing vulnerabilities back. For a regime like North Korea that runs on stolen data and hacked cash, this is no small loss. It's a sting. And it cuts deep. Because power in Pyongyang isn't just military. It's digital. And now the Philippines is a firewall in their path. The battlefield has changed. From islands to IP addresses, from bullets to bugs in the code, from missiles to malware. But this isn't just defense, it's deterrence. Every failed breach sends a message. We see you, and sometimes we're already inside. That's the part they don't talk about. In secret rooms in Manila, operators run silent drills, simulated takedowns, mock ransom defenses. It's no longer about who has more guns. It's about who owns the next domain of war. And now, the Philippines does. But what comes next is not a virus. It's something far slower and much harder to erase. Because fear doesn't always come in code. Sometimes it comes in culture. What happens when a people's way of life starts slipping into another regime's backyard? Are they afraid of the signal or the song? In 2020, no guns fired, no bases built, no troops moved. Yet something crossed the border. It wasn't a missile, it was music. From Manila's streets, a pop song finds its way onto a USB stick. That stick reaches northern China, then into North Korea, smuggled, traded, whispered. On it, a Filipino TV drama, a love story, a taste of life not monitored by the state. Harmless, not to Pyongyang. Because to a regime built on control, a simple melody can be a revolution. A joke on a sitcom can be a threat. A scene of voting, of freedom, of laughter. Enough to plant doubt. And doubt is what dictators fear most. While the Philippines sends soldiers to drills, it also sends something more powerful. Ideas. In the South, those songs play in malls. In the North, they play in secret, low volume, behind locked doors, hearts racing. This is soft power, and it's louder than it looks. Filipino democracy, Filipino resilience, Filipino joy, all wrapped in stories and sounds. The regime watches, and it tightens rules, raids homes, smashes phones. But the files keep coming. The ideas keep spreading. The people keep wondering, why can't we live like that? The government calls it poison, but the people, they call it hope. Because no wall is high enough to block a dream. And North Korea now faces two fronts, a military one and a mental one. The Philippines didn't mean to wage this war, but culture doesn't need permission. It travels, it tempts, it changes. But while Manila's stories spread slowly, its reach is also growing in steel. So the question becomes, how does the trap now tighten from land to sea? The 2020s. Not every battle needs a bullet. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon is a meeting room. And in those rooms, the Philippines began closing the door. Behind the scenes, in ASEAN halls and UN talks, Filipino diplomats pushed hard. Not just words, but action. They asked neighbors, why let North Korea cheat us all? One by one, the support grew. Quiet, steady, strong. And then came the ships. Not warships, not carriers, but the dark ones. The illegal tankers with no flags, no names, slipping oil to Pyongyang by night. The Philippine Navy watched, tracked, shared intel. They helped allies find the smugglers, blocked routes, forced reroutes. Suddenly, North Korea's secret fuel lifeline began to choke. And it wasn't Washington doing it. It was Manila. Each seized ship was more than cargo lost. It was time. It was money. It was a message. We're not afraid of you. This wasn't a superpower flex. It was neighbors saying no. And Pyongyang felt the sting. Because sanctions hurt most when your neighbors enforce them. When there's nowhere left to turn. No ports, no fuel, no help. That's when fear sets in. And while missiles may grab headlines, it's this slow squeeze that breaks regimes. The Philippines didn't fire. It didn't invade. It cut the lines, closed the doors, tightened the noose, all from across the sea. Without a single soldier stepping foot. A small democracy, quietly turning off the lights in Pyongyang. But here's the real question. Why does North Korea fear a nation so free, so open, so different? More than it fears those with nuclear bombs. Not all threats wear a uniform. Some wear a cross. Some carry a Bible. Some walk with hope, not guns. In the dark corners of North Korea, escape is a prayer. And sometimes that prayer gets answered from a place thousands of miles away, the Philippines. Here, faith isn't hidden. It's sung, it's preached, it's lived loud and free. And that freedom becomes a beacon. Quietly, over the years, Filipino Christian networks began to reach out. They helped fund safe houses. They supported underground routes. They backed missionaries who worked along the borders, not with bullets, but with bread, medicine, and hope. Defectors whispered stories of Filipino aid, of hands reaching across rivers and fences, of freedom wrapped in kindness. And for the North Korean regime, that was terrifying. Not because of war, but because of truth. Because once someone tastes freedom, control begins to crack. This wasn't just politics anymore. It was spiritual warfare, belief versus fear, light versus silence. The Philippines had become more than a military partner. It had become a crack in the wall, a place where faith walked past borders and planted seeds Pyongyang couldn't stop. Because how do you shut down a message that travels in songs, that moves in people's hearts, that teaches one simple idea? You are not alone. That's the power Manila holds, not just in bases or treaties, but in values. And those values, they scare dictators more than weapons ever could. Because once belief spreads, barbed wire can't hold it. Guns can't kill it. Walls can't hide it. So here's the final question. What ties the bases, the bites, the bans, and the Bibles together into the one thing Pyongyang fears most? North Korea fears many things. Bombs, missiles, airstrikes. But its deepest fear is influence. That silent force that slips through cracks and changes people from the inside. And that's where the Philippines becomes powerful. Not through nukes, not through invasion, but through something far more dangerous to dictators. Connection. It connects the US to Asia. It connects freedom to the oppressed. It connects ideas across borders with no need for bullets. Its location makes it a launch pad. Its alliances make it strong. Its cyber power makes it resilient. Its culture spreads beyond maps. Its faith reaches hearts that regimes try to lock. Each part is small, but together they become a storm that can reach Pyongyang without a single soldier landing. And that's the twist. The Philippines isn't trying to invade, but its very existence, its freedom, its networks, its truth, that's what scares North Korea the most. Because if the people start thinking, the regime starts falling. And that is the fear no bunker can stop. North Korea doesn't fear the Philippines' missiles. It fears something deeper. It fears ideas, freedom, Connection, because in a place ruled by silence, even a whisper can become a storm. For the regime to survive, it must build walls. So here's the big question. Which one does Pyongyang fear the most? The bases, the cyber power, or the quiet growing influence of a free people? Drop your answer below. And don't forget, subscribe for more deep, cinematic stories about how small nations change the world.